and thanks for listening to the Quality Hub, chatting with ISO experts. I'm your host, Xavier Francis. Today I'm here with Scott Dawson, President of Core Business Solutions, and Doug Petillo, Managing Partner at Navigant Ventures. Glad you both could join us.
Happy to be here.
Absolutely a pleasure, X.
Again, thank you both for being here. Excited to hear what you all have to say. Now, today's podcast is part of our Survive and Thrive series, a podcast dedicated to delivering practical strategies for small businesses. Our mission is to help you navigate these unprecedented times of change and uncertainty. Our episodes are packed with real-world advice from trusted industry experts, tailored specifically for small business leaders like you. Thanks for joining us as we explore insights that can empower you and your business to not only survive, but truly thrive. Now, today's topic is becoming the supplier of choice in a disrupted economy. But before we get into our topic, let's learn a little bit about our guests and their journey. We'll start with Doug. Could you share a little bit about yourself?
I'd be happy to. Thanks for having me on. So my career has been mostly focused on working with small businesses as a venture capital investor through 8 pools of capital, as an operator, as CEO, and having the top spot in just about every functional area of a company. And as a business advisor, I've been involved with directly more than 4 dozen companies in that way over the last 30 years. And you start to see a lot of repeating patterns. And so with time and age, a lot of how I help the companies is helping them recognize the things that are happening in their business and looking for ways to help them improve it, stay out of their own way, and maximize their potential.
So business wisdom, if you would. You've gained some of that over the years you've been in.
The price of gray hair.
Then why do you have less of it than me is what I want to know. How about you, Scott? You want to give us a little bit about your history?
Yeah, glad to, X. I've been working in manufacturing prior to founding Core Business Solutions. So my background is working in a small business in manufacturing, quality management. And then the last 25 years with Core, helping small businesses with compliance and to be successful. That's how Doug and I met. Doug's been a good friend of Core Business Solutions for a number of years. Doug brought up the age question comment, and I won't take that personally, Doug, but we have had a few years together and still just enjoying working together. But I thought of Doug as a guest for this podcast because he just brings this experience through, I'll call it thick and thin, or the ups and downs of economic cycles and business cycles. And, we're right now in the middle of a crazy time. So I thought Doug might bring some perspective that I think others might benefit from.
That's great. That's great. Well, we appreciate you both being here. And as far as age, I think as Indiana Jones said, it's not the years, it's the mileage. So I've got a lot of miles. I'll say that much. Well, let's kick this off. I'm going to hand it over to you, Scott, to ask some of the questions. I'll interject some here and there, and let's get started.
Yeah, glad to, X. And Doug, I know we've spoken before about, all the turmoil in the economy right now, really stemming from governmental changes and economic trends globally. But a lot of small businesses are feeling really uncertain. But what do you think it means for a small business to be a supplier of choice in this environment?
Well, for starters, it's a mark of distinction for any small business, but it has some important implications that go beyond just the commercial opportunity.
Okay.
It tells the market that your customer values what they provide more than the alternatives.
Yeah.
And that's really important. But 2, it's an expression of the risk that they perceive in contracting with this small business. Although the funny thing is, it's less about being small and more about having a reputation for being good in the eyes of the customer.
Right.
Good products, good price performance, but also intangibles like reliability, customer service, etc. So for a small business, earning this badge from one customer can be a door opener to other prospects.
That's great.
So I guess I'm hearing you say that a first place to focus is with your current relationships and your current customers and making sure you're helping them solve problems that they're facing and being that rock of Gibraltar, if you will, for them. And you can leverage that relationship or those relationships to build other business opportunities.
Yeah. I was thinking about this. We're talking about small business primarily here. But what mistakes do suppliers often make when they're trying to stand out?
Well, to me, far and away, the big one is overpromising. And we all do it. It's really hard to avoid. But the root of it, in my view, is not objectively and regularly assessing the major risks and the critical dependencies in their own operation.
Okay.
And so that leads to overconfidence. It leads to doing things you think just to win the business, I just got to win the business. I'll say anything to win the business, but then you got to live with the business that you won. And if you can't follow through on those promises, that can have a long-term detrimental effect. It's very common. And it's a big reason why companies require things like certifications, like ISO, because these standards assess how robust management practices really are. And there really aren't many other ways for a customer to have much of a clue about how the sausage really gets made. They try to do due diligence in purchasing. There's only so much you can do. So, if you can embrace the things necessary to do good business, then it puts you in the best position to be able to deliver and earn those badges that we talked about a moment ago in the eyes of the customer.
Yeah, so Doug, let me drill into that a little bit. You mentioned that when you're making promises, it's often you're not really clued into your own risks that you're facing, or maybe you are clued in and you just don't want to say anything when you're making a commitment to a customer. What's a couple of examples where, a small business might overlook something and then it burns them down the road?
Well, for the youngest companies that don't necessarily have a lot of commercial experience with the product or service, overestimating the ability to deliver on timeframes on a schedule and to, have a full understanding of all of the costs required to deliver the business and make a margin, which is the other little thing people forget about is it's only a good contract. It's only good business if you can make money on it. And that's in everybody's interest because that's what leads to the long-term success. That's in the upfront kind of scoping out, what are we going to do? Can we do it? And what are we going to bid?
Right.
But then you got to be able to deliver on that contract over day in and day out throughout the contract term, which can extend for years, many years. So then you start having all other kinds of risks and considerations that come into play. The people you have on your team, people you need to hire to deliver on this, other types of economic shocks that can come along the way, the ability to keep up with competition, even though you have a contract that doesn't make you immune to competition. There's a whole set of, and so to be able to regularly stay on top of running a tight ship is important in being able to stand up the contract that you signed throughout time and then eventually to get it renewed.
Yeah, it does sound like a QMS would be a good way to help manage some of that stuff that you're talking about.
Yeah, to a lot of management teams, everybody's busy, and small businesses, more than larger businesses, don't have the luxury to have extra staff on hand.
Right.
So systems are a good way to help minimize the distraction, let management teams stay current on maintenance types issues, like, making sure that we're remaining in compliance with our business practices that we're espousing without it being like a top line issue that has to get addressed when their time there's a lot competing for their time.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. And, we're now in a period of time, we're midway through 2025. Everyone's watching the 5 o'clock news to see what's next, or try to understand what might be coming or what's changed. With all this disruption, are there opportunities to win in all of this? We kind of spin this as if it's all negative or potentially negative, but there are going to be winners and there are going to be losers whenever there's a change. How do you view the opportunities to win in this environment?
Yeah, well, that's a good point. There are always opportunities to win. It's a competitive world out there. So when there's a disruption or when you're in a period where it's harder to see far into the future for whatever reason, there are two major elements to consider. One is economics, the economics of your offering or the attributes that a buyer might care more about. And maybe a headline example of that would be domestic manufacturing versus offshore, right? Maybe something to position around or play up depending on your situation. But for a lot of companies, maybe there's something they can do about that, but maybe not, at least not short term. The other element is supplier risk. And this is something you can tackle. And to your point, Scott, you can play both offense and defense on this. So keep in mind that your customers depend on you and they need to know you'll be around. So remind them why they do business with you. Show them things that point to how good of a vendor you are, track record of fulfilling a contract with them, awards, recognition, other customer wins, third-party assessments, like certifications or other kinds of compliance. They all make a good impression. That's defense, making sure your customer base loves you and is rock solid. But your competitors in this environment might be vulnerable.
Right.
And that's the opportunity. And that's where you can play a little bit of offense. The best thing, I think, for that is case studies. Anything that can show the impact that you have or that products and services, the impact that they have, your competitive strengths, performance metrics that you're willing to share outside your organization. Again, third-party assessments. They can be enough in turbulent environments to get a foot in the door at your competitors' accounts. And that's a good opportunity.
That is a good opportunity.
Well, I guess I'm hearing you say, Doug, that you need to play to your strengths. Before you can do that, you've got to execute. And it seems to me it's important that you understand and articulate what is it that you bring that helps your customers to do what they need to do. And it's that impact that you were talking about. Could you elaborate a little bit on what it means to talk about the impact your product or service may be having on a customer?
Well, that could vary widely based on what your product and service is. So, a lot of people will try to express impact in terms of an ROI, a return on investment. So if you're charging X, can you demonstrate tangible value of something more than X? And how much? And how much of that even is hard dollar versus, something that might be a little more squishy? Or if it's intangible, how do you reinforce those intangible things like if your product or services boost productivity? Whatever is the main reason or reasons that your customer is buying your products and services, just distilling that down and in the most compelling way, articulating how much value they're getting for it. And hopefully it's a lot. And your customers know it. Somebody at your customer knows it, but they don't think about it every day.
Right.
And that's why it's worth reminding it. Or if you're selling into a big, complex organization, your users might know it, but the decision makers might not know it. And your users might not be the best champions to pound on the table when the executives teams are looking to cut costs.
Yeah.
And you don't want to just get swept up on that. So that's where the defense really can make a difference, because there's a part of it that's introspective. So keeping a fresh assessment of what it is that you do that's really good to begin with, and testing if it's still really good.
Yeah,
that's important because other companies are hearing the same speech, right? They're going to go after your account. So you want to make sure that you have a subjective an assessment of what it is that is good that you do and how well that lines up with what your customers care about, and being able to measure that, however. There's also the other aspect of the introspective part, which is, are we running our business in the best possible way? Which ultimately has a financial impact, right?
Right.
A well-run company doesn't have a lot of cost leakage, has a team that's very cohesive. Everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing. They execute on it when there are problems. Good companies have problems too, but when they get identified quickly, there's a process for addressing them and it gets put behind you. Are we running the company in the best possible way we can, top to bottom? And keep all the Kool-Aid in the fridge. You don't want to drink that stuff during these conversations. This is the time to be sober, identify where you have risks in your business. Hey, 90% of our business is coming from one customer. Well, that could be an issue depending on how you lay out the case for these other pieces, as an example.
This is a chance to evaluate various risks in your business and taking some steps to shore up business with your current customers, maybe win some new business with your current customers, and take some steps to improve your business. I mean, this is a good time to do that. let's say that the orders are down a bit and you have a little extra time, that not everybody is busy. Well, what are the initiatives you could launch to use the time, redeem the time, and not fritter the time away with worry and concern, but let's stay focused on how we're going to come out of this stronger than we went into it.
Right.
There are all kinds of tactics that you can use. Once you do the assessment,
Yeah.
and you identify where you have issues or risk concerns, the things that are going to keep you up at night, then you can deploy whatever series of appropriate mitigating factors. So for example, I mean, let's say you are a company and you have huge customer concentration, and the customer's got a year left on the contract and the market's flattening out and competitors are catching up. That's enough to make you feel like you're backed into a corner.
Yeah.
But there's still things that you can do. You can approach that customer for an extension before the contract is up. And you can give a lot of good business justification for them and for you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's some price concessions, or you expand the scope of the services, something that compels them to take that risk off the table for you or delay it. That can be a win. Because if you can buy another year or two with that customer before they go shop around or issue an RFP for your stuff, where now you have to recompete for everything, that gives you time. It gives you time. Markets can recover, or you can get better visibility in other participants, or you can start to wean off the customer concentration risk or whatever. So it starts with having a good assessment of, at this moment in time, what can we reliably predict in our business? What can't we? And how much of our cost structure, how much is fixed versus variable? And what risk do we have to cash flow, or what risk do we have to key personnel or whatever? I mean, all of those things are the stuff that you want to be able to assess. And not just one time. By the way, you should be doing this stuff in good times, in the best
right.
of times too. But there's just a little more pressure to do it now because the forecasting window tightens up. But going through all that stuff, that's the first step. It brings the light onto some things that maybe you can address with some mitigating factors now that can ease some of the stress until the world gets better.
Mm-hmm.
Until the world gets better, whenever that is. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Maybe not for long,
That's true.
but it always does.
Right? Yeah.
It always does. There are good times, there are tough times, and you got to remember that both are just around the corner. With the planning horizons being short, and the uncertainty on the longer horizon is just so great right now. People are looking for really smart, maybe low-cost ways to get on the radar of key buyers or prime contractors. What are some suggestions you might have for steps or next steps that might not cost a lot of cash, but with some focus and attention, you can execute on them?
Yeah.
Yep. Well, the hardest thing to do in business is go find a new customer prospect. Yeah, you got to find them, you got to get their attention, you got to convince them to go with you, et cetera. It's a big pain. And that's in good times. So when markets are all churning around, that part even gets harder. So the first step in this, and we're primarily talking about new customers.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
To get attention, you want to consider first just what the buying behavior of your target is. So, whose attention are you really trying to get? Is it somebody in procurement? Is it a decision maker, a user, or beneficiary of your offering? And do they engage online, or where do they hang out? Which could be online. So LinkedIn can be an inexpensive way of getting in front of someone. Good old-fashioned offline channels work pretty well too. So if they network, do they network with peers? Do they work with organizations like the MEPs or the SBDCs? Apologize for the acronyms. So small business development centers or regional chambers of commerce. They might network with some of your customers. So again, back to you, your customers can be a real door opener on here. Presumably, they like you. You've just reminded them on how much good you're doing for them. And maybe those communications have expanded some of the work you're doing with them.
Right.
So the iron's hot. Best time to ask them for a referral. Those are warm introductions that come along with a case study built in. These guys are doing great work for us. You should talk with them. And there's a lot of, that's not a universal thing, because those referrals, in some cases, people would be reluctant to make referrals if it's to a competitive company or whatever. But that's only sometimes. A lot of times, people network regularly with their peers at other companies. They always have one toe in trade associations or stuff like that. And so it can be a good door opener, and it's the cost of a phone call.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really, really cheap. Once you get in front of somebody, you still have to figure out, well, what are you going to say? And that's where having the right message, fine-tuning your message, focusing in on concise statements of impact, promoting recognition that you've gotten, or any competitive selling pointers that you might have if you have some insights to what this prospect uses today to solve the problem you generally solve, whatever. And sometimes that can all happen over social media and email, which is great. It's cost effective. It seems to get more expensive, but at least it has the benefit of near instantaneous traceable results.
Right.
Which is good. In the old adage, sometimes it's better to get a fast no than nothing. You want a yes. But anyway, it gives you the best shot of catching the eye of the buyer. And sometimes it's phone call, sometimes it's offline. It all depends on the situation. Customer referrals, that always goes to the top of the list because you just get so much that goes along with the referral that warms the account.
You need to take the initiative to look for new opportunities with your current customers or new customers, but it also presumes you've got a good story that you can tell and you've got your house in order and you've really dealt with the blocking and tackling issues. You've got compliance under control, you're performing well, and you have those stories that you can bring out. It all kind of ties together. So being a supplier of choice, meaning, first of all, you want to be a supplier that you would choose. And then get yourself in front of people that are looking for solutions and the impacts that your products and services can bring about. So I think it's time to double down on basic business is really what we're saying.
Totally. Your customers, especially if you're the supplier of choice, because they respect you. They will answer the phone if you're calling, which is half the battle for a lot of companies. But, when I would call on customers, whether it was with an agenda that was maybe rooted in customer service, or if it was account management, or if I wanted to get ahead of a upcoming renewal, or whatever the reason was, there were always 2 points that were on my call agenda. Always. One, I would ask at the appropriate time what else we could be doing to help their customer, right? Product extensions, service extensions. What are their priorities? Getting them to lie down on the proverbial couch and spill their guts, because all of that is good information, critical information that you can't get any other way. And the other question is, who do you talk to? Who do you know that you'd be comfortable opening up a door for us? And again, if you're a supplier of choice, it puts you in a category where they're going to be more willing to stick their neck out for you.
Yeah.
Those last 2 questions, that is the offense and defense that we were talking about. The defense is, how do we further solidify and expand an account? The offense is, how do we open up a door to another one? Those should be 2 standing questions that are in any account contact that you have in times like this.
This has been great. I think it's a great discussion, a good points. I think you kind of summed it up for us there, just to make sure that you're being top of mind for people, getting your house in order, doing everything that you need to do to make sure that you are the supplier of choice when it comes to people's lists. Any last thoughts? Either one of you guys?
Well, what we're living through now, while it's different than prior, we'll just call them shocks, because it sounds like a nicer word, whatever reason. It's not the first one. It won't be the last one. And that's why having the vigilance over how you look at your operation internally as you kind of position for success in the market and with your growth goals in mind.
Yeah. All right. Scott, anything?
I don't think so, X. I know I've appreciated Doug's insight over the years, and he's telling our audience same things he's told me for years, and I try to put it in practice. But it's sound business advice that is a way to be a resilient business and succeed when times are tough.
Yeah.
And that's really what we're trying to offer the help with.
Well, that's great. I appreciate you being here, Doug and Scott. Hopefully we'll have you on again when we're not needing to talk about thriving instead of surviving, but just to give us some other business acumen, if you don't mind.
Anytime. The next one will be when we're in a booming economy trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Where should we spend all this money we just made? Well, thanks so much. Appreciate you being here. And that wraps up this episode of the Survive and Thrive series on the Quality Hub podcast, where we unpack real-world insights and share practical strategies to help small businesses like yours. If you found these conversations helpful, share them with your colleagues, your network, or anyone who could use a boost of practical guidance. You can access all past episodes on our website at thecoresolution.com, and be sure to check out the podcast description for contact information on Core Business Solutions and our podcast guests. And remember, thriving in a changing world starts with knowledge and the courage to act on it. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep leading with clarity, resilience, and purpose. Have a great day.